We've got questions on the Amish, poetry, and veganism. And Charles answers what political issues he leans the most left on. Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu, now being broadcast and podcast on the Crusade Channel. Talk radio the way it should be at crusadechannel.com. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with an arcane Charles Coulombe.
Arcane?
Very arcane.
You mean some sort of
Yeah.
secret, mystical, kind of dark academia kind of thing?
Understood by few, mysterious or secret.
Ooh, that sounds great.
And
I've been attacked as being arcane. People don't like me for being arcane.
when I think of this, I think of your principle that confusion is the guardian of truth.
It sure is. Confusion is the guardian of truth. And I think the more people understand that, the more they'll understand themselves. I think that there's a sense in which, well, you know, it reminds me very, very much of a great theologian of my youth. She was actually a female theologian. It was in the 60s, you know, when female theologians were really. Her name was Petula Clark, and she wrote, "When you're alone and all your troubles surround you, you can always go downtown. Don't stay at home and let your worries surround you. There are movie shows downtown. Listen to the music of the traffic in the city. Go there, something where the neon lights are pretty. Happy again."
That sounds so familiar.
Does it now? Petula Clark, I think, really understood in the angst of modern man. In songs like Don't Sleep in the Subway, Darling, It's a Sign of the Times, and of course, Downtown, she expressed, I think, the yearnings of a whole generation, the need that we felt and feel, I think, for wholeness, for healing, both of the planet and ourselves. And I think that there really is a sense when we look at the great contributors to the thought of my generation, women like Petula Clark, like Judy Carnes, Liberace, Johnny Mathis, we were discussing in the pre-show. These are people who I think really understood in a way that very few people do today.
Man, what are you doing here on this show with me? I mean, you could be out there making millions. I mean, you could just be cranking this out, and just everybody would just eat it up.
They'd eat, yeah, I know they would. They really would eat the garbage up, especially my contemporaries. But I'll tell you what, you know, if you can sell a boomer, you can sell anything. I mean, we're a whole generation based on delusion, and I think it's one of our more endearing traits. We have quite a few, but that's one of them.
How did that start? That's an interesting way to put things.
Well, actually, all joking aside, for like a nanosecond, I've given a lot of thought to that, and you know, I think part of it is our fathers had come through the Depression and World War II and all that, and in a lot of ways wanted to shield us from the more unpleasant realities of life. Things like, you know, having to make sense, uh, make a complete thought, a complete sentence. And if you think about it, we were catered to in a big way. The kids this, kids that, because there were so many of us, and we were profitable, or at least our parents could be fleeced for entertainment. The baby boom as children are what made Disney, and vice versa. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I love Disney, the early Disney, of course, not the current crap, but nevertheless, the fantastic and the unreal which, you know, I love Tolkien, I love Lewis. I'm not an enemy of fantasy, but there was certainly a lot of unreality. You know, the idea that all you have to do is mean well, and things will somehow work out right in the end, and that everything is basically wonderful. When I mean, a lot of things are wonderful. Don't get me wrong. In a lot of ways, the world is a glorious garden of song, a medley of extemporanea. But there's, you know, if you don't have definite beliefs and a definite code, and if you don't try to live for the others in your life rather than focus entirely on yourself, if you don't do that, then things will fall apart. I mean, that's one thing that didn't get passed on. Part of the problem, I think, with the providing the lavish lifestyle, lavish in comparison, that many of us enjoyed was that a lot of fathers, breadwinners as they were then, did not spend the time with their children, did not inculcate in them their own values. They presumed or assumed that they would just somehow pick them up. The problem with that was that this was all at a time when those values were, when church and state were going through moral revolutions of their own. And neither the church nor the public school were giving children the same values and beliefs that they had given them in my father's day. So my dad was a smart man, and he caught on to the gag real early. Hence, my brother and I turned out the way we did. But a lot of our parents didn't. And so a lot of my generation was pretty screwy and produced children yet screwier still. The Roman poet Horace had a poem, which of course was meant for his own time, but it really has haunted me ever since I read it the first time, which was, "Injurious time, what age escapes thy curse? Evil our grandsires were, our fathers worse. And we, till now unmatched in ill, must leave successors more corrupted still."
Hmm.
So, you know, we really swallowed a lot of garbage and we passed it on. And I can't help but look at the Antifas, the BLMs, and the safe space children, the little munchkins. I can't look at all the denizens of Weenie Central without, you know, they didn't appear by magic. You know, or as my brother would say, they didn't jump out of duffel bags.
Hmm.
And that, again, all kidding aside, very briefly, one of the reasons why it's very gratifying for me to do this show is to try to pass on to our younger viewers, of whom there are quite a few, some of the values and beliefs and truths that I did pick up, and that so many of my peers, your parents, and now, God help us, grandparents, did not. I mean, and they're, you know, it's funny how life is. I was talking to three different young people this past couple days. Um, Two of them I've known for 7 years, one for 5. And you know, to me, I've just met them all. They're recent acquaintances, but they've known me most of their lives. That's how it seems to them. And see, we older people, because we're in that strange position, we have an obligation, I think, to try to pass on the best of what we got. Bearing in mind, as our parents did, if they succeeded in passing on the best of what they got, that the young are going to have to face a world that'll be totally alien to us. So, in other words, I'm in a position to pass on certain particular values, but I have no idea how our audience will be called upon to try to apply them in their lives when they're my age. or your age for that matter, because the world will be so different from what I'm used to, just as the world that I live in now would be unimaginable to my father when he first came into my consciousness. When I think of the dad who lived in 1963, if I could magically bring him forward to the garbage that his son lives in now, I don't know what that guy Coulombe would have made of it.
Yeah, the difference in generations is a fascinating thing. I remember when we started the show, and the presidential election of 2016 was happening, and
Yeah, it
Trump
was
wasn't
looming.
president yet. But I remember being amazed at the enthusiasm and the earnestness of the younger generation, because that was so alien to my generation, which, in my opinion, is characterized by apathy, just being laid back, comfortable, doing various things. So, and I told you that, and I remember what you had explained a very important aspect of the younger generation. You said, Vinny, all these people know is Obama.
No.
That's all they've had. You've seen the before time.
Yeah.
They don't know that, and so the war is on. I thought that
Yeah,
was,
and see, now they've had 4 years of the Trumpster and 4 years of Sleepy Joe.
Yeah.
And what's come out of that is a great deal of division, but there's a word I'm looking for, and it's not coming into my head. Senility, ladies and gentlemen, is fun to experience from the inside, let me tell you. Polarization, that's the word I want. Polarization. Especially because the two front runners, the Trumpster and the senile guy, have been such disappointments for so many of what were their base. And so the thing becomes very uncertain. I mean, you'll still see some people who are really passionately fond of Trump. You won't find too many people who are passionately fond of the senile guy. And if they were, he wouldn't remember. So we're at a different time from when we started, and look how quickly it's passed.
Right. Well, I mean, we're getting into a different spot. As I was telling one of the fans of the show, I was talking to her, and I said, I only have one prediction for this election, which is that whoever wins, regardless of who wins, there will be unprecedented clamor about the legitimacy of this election.
Oh, definitely.
And that
nobody's going to believe it.
That is rooted in, unfortunately, an increasing distrust of all institutions.
And increasing distrust, and also, when it comes to elections, the best way you could restore trust in them, frankly, is to insist that if you want to vote, you show up at the polling booth.
Yeah.
And if you don't, guess what? You don't vote. I mean, I wouldn't vote. But see, anything other than that, mind you can still phony things up even with that. But you would certainly reduce the ability to perform fraud considerably. So too with, I hate to beat a dead horse, but identification for voting. And again, if you're going to say it's racist, that's nice. Then so are driver's licenses and passports. Why should I have to have a passport just to travel? Racist. Why should I have to have a driver's license to drive a car? Racist. For that matter, why do I have to present ID when I'm withdrawing money from the bank? If I know the ID, if I know an account number and the name, why can't I just pull the money out? Because if I'm a person of color, and that means I'm incapable of getting ID for voting, It must be true of everything else. So banking, driving, and air travel are inherently racist. I get it. I understand.
We try not to think too hard about it.
I know. Hurts. Hurts. I get it. The archetype coming up from the depths of the collective unconscious for a change in feed. That by waving hands like that really annoyed one of our commenters a couple weeks ago. So I'll try not to do that, just not to upset him.
Really, that's surprising. I didn't catch that one. Usually, people love the hands and they love the mouth and
Yeah, but this is the person who felt I was undignified.
Oh, okay.
He wrote a long letter, so you might not have your eyes might have glazed over at some point.
Probably.
But no, I mean, the fellow did accuse me of acting as though I were above it all. Well, let me assure you, ladies and gentlemen, I am stuck in the same parallel universe far from Earth Prime that the rest of you are. Now, mind you, the Tumbler House Tower rears its lovely head over the bustling city of Arcadia on Earth Prime. This was established in the pre-show, ladies and gentlemen. All this garbage we're going through right now is because we're actually living in a Sliders episode. Look it up if you don't know what that means. And the fact is that this is not Earth Prime. This is a parallel universe where things are screwed up. You don't really think you'd have Drag Queen Story Hour on Earth Prime.
No, that's ridiculous.
No, of course. It would never happen. The rainbow flags everywhere. No. Trans kids being mutilated by their parents. Not on Earth Prime. Nope. So all we have to do is get the Sliders to get back to Earth Prime. You'll be back, back to normal. And in the meantime, isn't it great to know, ladies and gentlemen, that the real you, the actual you, as opposed to us phonies here, are actually A-OK back on Earth Prime. Isn't that comforting?
I feel like it all makes sense. This world that we live in is so thematically wrong in one direction, It's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's that world,
Yes, exactly. Well, see, that was the way it was on the show, One was that they'd had an ice age. Another, magic worked instead of science. Another, they were all messed up one way or the other. And so ours has basically gone gay.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like they had one where the women were the dominant gender. They had all these things. So this is obviously that alternate universe. But if we could just get them back home, everything will sit back into sanity.
All right.
So if you see them, a couple of college kids from 30 years ago, a big fat Welshman, and a black pianist all running together, the four of them, you do whatever they need you to do. If they say, "Gee, could you get us to Fifth and Maple by 10:30 p.m.?" Do it. Don't ask questions. Just get them in your car, drive them there, and when you see them vanish, pray that the next stop they get to is Earth Prime. It could happen. You don't know.
Well, that's good to know. So all you out there, remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of remembering, in real time, we're doing this on the Vigil of Pentecost. You folks will see this on a day which in Austria and many civilized countries is a holiday, Whit Monday, the day after Pentecost. But this year it's also a holiday in our very own United States. It is Memorial Day. Now, if this is Pentecost Sunday, it means several things. It's the beginning of the Pentecost octave. It is the beginning of the season after Pentecost. But are you ready for the wild one?
Yes.
What is next Sunday?
Next Sunday? I think I forgot already. You said this last week. I don't know.
Trinity Sunday.
Hmm.
And if you are a member of the Ordinariate, your Sundays are not going to be the Sundays after Pentecost, but Sundays after Trinity.
Interesting.
And the reason is because in medieval England, that was how it was. The Anglicans carried that over, and so the Ordinariates carried that over.
Okay.
But wait, there's more.
Okay.
Yeah, are you ready? Can you dig it?
I can.
The Thursday in civilized countries, the Thursday after Trinity, is the great feast of Corpus Christi.
Hmm.
You with me so far?
I am with you. I'm so excited for Corpus Christi because I want to be involved in a procession.
Well, there are,
especially post-COVID too.
Well, you might try Saints Peter and Paul, Wilmington. They usually have a good one.
Okay.
It's a long drive, but it's down by San Pedro.
Isn't one of your nephews typically? I've seen him in a Hollywood one. I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was for Blessed Sacrament, and of course, Corpus Christi is the patronal festival of Blessed Sacrament. But I don't know what they're doing now because the lady who was the pastoral life director is now gone, and they once again have a Jesuit pastor. I don't know what he does. I haven't been home since all this has changed. But wait, there's more.
Okay.
Because the octave day of Corpus Christi is, of course, the following Thursday. And the next day of the octave of Corpus Christi, the next day is the Feast of the Sacred Heart.
That's right.
Now, if that weren't enough, June 24th is going to be the Feast of Saint Jean-Baptiste. You with me so far?
I'm with you, Charles.
Now, the night before Saint Jean-Baptiste, the night of the 23rd, is Saint John's Eve. Time for telling ghost stories and lighting a bonfire. But wait, there's more. Because a few days later, the 1st of July, will be the Feast of the Precious Blood. It's also the Feast of St. Junipero Serra and Dominion Day for our Canadian fans. And what's happening 3 days after 1st of July?
4th of July, if my math is correct.
The glorious, unsafe 4th, Independence Day. Are you excited?
I'm always excited. 4th of July.
I was very proud of Los Angeles on the 4th of July, 2020.
I have never been prouder, actually, when that was happening. It was beautiful to be a part of that.
It was great. May the city regain her spirit someday. But what's going to start happening the last week or two of July?
What's going to start happening I don't know. What's going to start happening?
Well, what are you going to start seeing in the stores?
Has it really come to that? Halloween decorations in the store?
The very first few will start popping up.
I thought we were in August for that. Okay. Wow, that's bad. Okay.
The wheel of the year is turning again. And even though we're not begun the summer yet, already the merchants will begin looking to pick up that Halloween money.
I think you like that the merchants are doing that because fall is your favorite season, and so you like the encroachment of fall onto summer because you don't like summer. So while you have been criticizing these merchants, they are actually doing exactly what you want them to do. See?
That's kind of an arcade question, isn't it? I think it's extremely arcade, and it deals with Halloween.
Oh, the commercialization of Halloween, how horrible. It's going all the way to July. Ooh.
I like your ooh. You're like my dad saying about the easily scandalized person, how much they enjoy being scandalized. Oh, that's horrible. And then what? Oh, oh, they're putting out the first Halloween stuff the last week in June. That's terrible. Where are they doing that? Well, to be fair, though, the reason why I love it is precisely, you're precisely right. In the heat, it gives you hope the cooler weather is coming. Because I'm all about cooler weather. I'm all about, spring and autumn are really my, autumn is my favorite season. Spring here, not in LA because it doesn't really exist in LA. In LA, it's just winter and autumn. Those are my favorites. I love the winter here, but I love the spring here too. So that still leaves me with summer being hot and humid, which is, I could do without that, but it's only 3 months. The rest of the year are varying kinds of delicious. The mellowness of autumn, the stark cold and bright lights and celebrativeness and glühwein and all that of winter, the lovely flowers and emerging life of spring, all good.
I dream that one day I will escape the eternal summer that is California and experience the seasons proper, because I know that's going to do something entirely new to my perspective on life,
Oh yeah? Yeah, have you never heard of the Beach Boys?
But that's my mom's favorite band. Are you kidding me? What song?
See? Well, I mean, just the totality. The Beach Boys, Jan and Dean, the Safaris. I'm talking about the endless summer that was California in 1963. I wasn't there then, but that's when all that milieu. One of the great shocks of my life was to find out that Jan and Dean's lyrics to Surf City were not the salacious lyrics I thought they were.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I thought that what they were singing was 2 boys for every girl, or 2 girls. No, it's the other way. 2 girls for every boy. We're going to Surf City because it's 2 for 1. We're going to Surf City because it's 2 for 1. Well, it wasn't 2 girls for every boy. It was 2 curls for every board.
Like a wave?
Yeah. Well, it's a specific surfing term.
Yeah.
Would you believe that Frankie Avalon and Annette Funicello are always at the beach?
Frankie Avalon?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm mixing up people. No, I would not believe that they're always at the beach.
How about Gidget?
Okay, I'm definitely mixing up people in this off the menu world, because what you said Gidget, and for some reason I thought of the Billboard blonde girl that you also.
No, that's Angeline.
Angeline.
Angeline, I would pay not to see Angeline in a bikini. She's got to be pushing 80.
Okay. Anyhow,
Of course,
Gidget, Angeline.
Frankie Avalon and Annette Funicello. Now there's a foursome.
Gidget and Angeline, they were before their, they honestly, if you think about them, they belong in the era of social media, the way they're built. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of sad, actually.
Gidget? Well, she wasn't overly built. She was sweet.
No, I mean, for social media, like, just, they just wanted to share so much of what they had. You know what I mean?
Well, they did. And Gidget, again, I think that Gidget, not so much Angeline, but certainly Gidget, Frankie Avalon, Jan and Dean, the Beach Boys, Annette Funicello, Bobby V. All of these figures had so much to impart to us, so much wisdom, The what? She's my Venus in blue jeans, Mona Lisa with a ponytail.
What? What is that
Venus
from?
in blue jeans, Mona Lisa with a ponytail. That's a Frankie Avalon song.
Those are some strange lyrics.
All right, what about a Runaround Lover? They say that you're a runaround lover, but you say it isn't true. Still, if you throw me up for another, I'll know, believe me, I'll know. 'Cause the night has 1,000 eyes, and 1,000 eyes can't help but see. So believe me when you tell those little white lies that the night has 1,000 eyes.
Very nice.
Bobby V sang that. The night has 1,000 eyes. And then Jennifer Connelly memorably turned it into a steamy torch song in Dark City.
Wow, never heard of it. Jennifer Connelly? That's pretty recent then, too. Wait, am I thinking of the actress from Beautiful Mind, right? Jennifer Connelly?
Yes,
Yeah.
Beautiful Mind, The Rocketeer, and Dark City.
Okay.
You seem very confused this evening.
I'm always confused with you, Charles. It has to do with your arcane nature. I thought we were over this already.
You can never be over the arcade. Actually, I used to go to an arcade down in Coney Island when I was little.
That's arcade.
Oh, I do that.
All right.
You don't think Coney Island was kind of arcade?
Okay, now you're just saying random things. So now we're going to move forward.
I'm not saying random things. You know what I told my brother Andre when I was going to go on the Three Kingdoms tour, England, Scotland, and Ireland? I said, I'm returning to our ancestral isles. And he said, what, Coney Island? Did I ever tell you about our friend Richard Fiedner?
No.
He lived in Fort Lee, New Jersey, and he used to correspond with Rosetta.
Okay, just don't go there, Charles. Okay, we're not gonna go there. Okay, moving on. We don't have any memes this week. Okay.
I thought we had memes.
No memes, just one, or just in this slot.
Don't be a meme. Don't be a meme. Show them a meme.
I will if you settle down and behave yourself.
All right, I'll be good.
All right.
That's
perfect.
I'm actually studying to be a hand model.
All right. So we've got a submission from Brittany Papish, who sent us an image, and she says, I thought Mr. Coulombe would like to know that we just had our first son and named him Carlo Nicola Papish after Blessed Karl of Austria. Carlo is Croatian for Carl or Charles.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't it? That's such a cute Blessed Karl doll, too. That's really...
And a cute baby. But I think you pronounced his name Papic.
Papic? Oh, okay, excuse me. Yeah, Papic. Super cute baby. I mean, that goes without saying. Really adorable. So congratulations on a happy and healthy baby, Brittany.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty cool stuff. All right. State of the week time.
Okay. What do we got?
We've got 3 left. We're down to the nitty gritty.
Wow, the Rat Pack is down to the rats.
Today, we're going to do New York.
What can I say about heaven on earth? My native state. Well, for one thing, New York does not include Richard Feeder's hometown of Fort Lee, New Jersey. However, it doesn't.
You bagging on the New Jersey people? Watch out, you turncoat.
I'm not bagging on Jersey. Nobody bags on Jersey. Everybody respects Jersey.
Oh,
Richard Feeder respects Jersey. That's why he lives in Fort Lee.
okay.
See? Got you there, smart guy. But the place to start in New York is, of course, New York City. And the place to start in New York City is the central borough of Manhattan. And the place to start in Manhattan is Lower Manhattan, where the city began. So what we'll do is we'll start with Battery Park, and we'll work our way up the island. We're going to have to go out to Brooklyn a little bit and out a little bit in the Long Island, but we'll deal with that in medias res. All right. So if you were to start at the southernmost tip of Manhattan Island, you would be on Battery Park, the home of the renowned former fortification, now recreational site, Castle Clinton, or as it was known in the former days, Castle Garden. Battery Park, a lot of wonderful memories. Then you go north. Well, you'll come to a lot of things. You'll come to the rebuilt World Trade Center, but I can't tell you much about it. I know the old one a lot better. You'll come to Fraunces Tavern, where, well, actually before that, you'll come to the Shrine of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. She was a New Yorker born, and it's wonderful to see her shrine there. Old St. Peter's is a little further up, where she was converted, came into the Catholic Church. John Street Methodist Church is there, which is one of the oldest Methodist churches in the country, if you're into Methodist history. St. Fraunces Tavern, which is where it's an old colonial tavern. It's where, what's his name? George Washington said farewell to his troops, and it's a great place to eat, great museum. You keep going, a little up north. You'll come to, you'll come eventually to Wall Street, and you'll come to, you'll come eventually also to Bowling Green, which is a little park in Lower Manhattan. Bowling Green was a colonial park, and it still has the old colonial fence around it with the crowns broken off that were there when it was first put in under the king. And the statue of King George III was pulled down, although you can, if you go to Philadelphia, you can see an exact replica of it. But there's a lot to see in Lower Manhattan. Wall Street was actually the northernmost, how would you say it, the northernmost point of the Dutch town, as the wall was. But in that vicinity, you will see St. Paul's Chapel, which is the Episcopal Church, the oldest public building on Manhattan. If you go inside, the pulpit has on the top of it the 3 feathers of the Prince of Wales, which is the only remaining sign of British authority in the on the island. On Wall Street itself, there's Trinity Church, which is the oldest Anglican church, not the building, but the parish. The building is only 19th century, but it's very beautiful, and Trinity Church Burying Ground is next to it. You'll also see Federal Hall, which is on the side of the building where George Washington was inaugurated, and it's a very important part of our national history. You'll see the Stock Exchange, of course, on Wall Street. Near there, too, you'll see the Museum of the American Indian, which is on the site of the old Fort George, which was where the British governor lived. That was knocked down a long, long time ago. It was replaced with a customs house, which now has the Museum of the American Indian. Keep going up to the island. You'll come to Old St. Patrick's Cathedral. You'll come to Chinatown. A lot of lovely things. And then you'll find yourself in Greenwich Village. Greenwich Village, what can I say? Unfortunately, my much, much, much beloved Chumley's is gone. But you can still get to the Minetta Tavern, the White Horse Inn, my favorite Washington Street Diner, the Waverly Diner, Bigelow's Chemists up 6th Avenue. The Merchant's House Museum is in Greenwich Village and well worth seeing. St. George's Ukrainian Church, Our Lady of Pompeii. Really, really lovely, 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 wonderful stuff. Come up a bit further, Pete's Tavern, McSorley's, the Old Town, all drinking establishments I love. Gramercy Park, my club, the Players, is there. I keep going up the island. Holy Innocents is my usual church. I used to go to St. Agnes also when they had the Tridentine Mass. They don't anymore. Holy Innocents does. You've got the boy, there's a lot of stuff I'm leaving out, but there's so much to see, ladies and gentlemen. Keen's in the 30s, Keen's Chop House, which is probably my favorite restaurant in the city. Then of course we've got a bunch of hotels that I like: the Waldorf, the Plaza, the St. Regis, and in the St. Regis, the King Cole Bar, Rockefeller Center, St. Patrick's Cathedral, St. Thomas Episcopal Church. All these are really neat. Captain Central Park, Bryant Park, up on Lex. Near Grand Central Station, which is worth seeing in itself. You've got Mechanics Hall. Mechanics Hall is interesting, not just because of the mechanics collection of locks and clocks and stuff, but also because they have a great many, hereditary societies have their headquarters in them. The Harvard, the Yale Club and the Harvard Club are nearby as well. We go up further to the Upper East Side, my birthplace, the site of Doctors Hospital, Gracie Mansion, which is where the mayor of Los Angeles, the mayor of New York lives. I miss City Hall, which is way down in Lower Manhattan, but City Hall. The Met, we're on the west side now. The Met. Keep going up, and you'll come eventually to Mother Shrine, and you will come to the Cloisters, which is a sort of manufactured out of bits and pieces medieval thing that belongs to the Metropolitan Museum. Oh, the American Museum of Natural History. I can't forget that. Those are some of the places that would definitely take you in Manhattan. If I were to take you to Staten Island, I would take you to see Richmond Town, which is sort of a rebuilt colonial settlement. The Morris Jumo Mansion is also in Upper Manhattan. In Brooklyn, I would take you to two places. I don't know Brooklyn well at all, except to go through it. One is Peter Luger's Steakhouse, and the other is the Monastery of the Precious Blood. I can't say I know Long Island all that well, although I'd take you. I missed also the Theodore Roosevelt birthplace. Sorry. And then going out to Long Island, I'd take you to Oyster Bay and Theodore Roosevelt's home at Sagamore Hill. In the Bronx, I really don't know. The New York Society Library and the New York Historical Society, both of them in Manhattan. The Bronx, not a lot to talk about. Also, St. Mary the Virgin's Smoky Mary in Times Square. So the Bronx, we're pretty much done with that and with Long Island. So now we're ready to go up the Hudson. There's Phillips Manor in Yonkers. Boy, there's so much in Westchester, which is where I was as a kid. Sunnyside, which is Washington Irving's home in Irvington, and then north of it, Sleepy Hollow, with the old Dutch church and his bridge, Christ Church, where Washington Irving was a member, and the Church of the Immaculate Conception, which is where the Tridentine Mass is said. It's a Mennonite church now. We come, of course, eventually to Mount Kisco, where I lived as a boy. My home at 11 Dunster Road, you can go and gawk at it if you like. The Blazer in Katona. The John Jay Homestead is near there. Now we keep going up the Hudson, the Travelers Rest in Ossining. We can't spend too much longer on the Hudson, so we'll go up on both sides. Peekskill and Poughkeepsie are worth seeing. So is Nyack. In Tapan is the 76 house where Major Andre was held prisoner. A note of warning: the town is Tapan, but the Tappan Zee Bridge crosses the Hudson a little bit to the north of there. Now that's a little bit strange because Tapan and Tappan are the same word. They're spelled the same. But it's like the city of New Orleans and Orleans Parish. Deal. Going further up in terms of towns that are worth seeing, New Paltz, Kingston, Rhinebeck. They all have a lot of colonial places that are really, really neat. Now we're up in Albany, the state capital, and you've got, well, the state capital. You've got the cathedral. You've got other things like that. From there, if you went due north, you would go up the old Conqueror's Road. You'd come to Lake Champlain. You'd see Crown Point, Fort Ticonderoga, and eventually hit the Canadian border. If you went west, however, you would go through the Mohawk Valley, the old lands of Sir William Johnson. So you'd come to Johnstown, Fort Johnson, and Castle Johnson, I think it's called. There's two houses are out that way. And then you keep going for the Mohawk Valley. You come into there's the Cobblestone Inn on the way to Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. You're in the Finger Lakes now. Then keep going west, and you will come to Buffalo and Our Lady of Victory's Basilica and all of the different institutions that Father Baker built in Buffalo. And then you'll come to Niagara Falls, where my parents had their honeymoon and where my dad claimed on their first morning together, my mother burned his cornflakes.
I don't understand. Cornflakes are a cereal.
I know that.
So why was she putting heat to cereal?
It was a joke. He always said she burned his cornflakes as a sign of how badly she cooked. Well, she didn't know how to cook. She wasn't raised with the idea that she'd have to. She'd have a cook of her own. She wouldn't have to do it. Fortunately for her and for Dad, my father's mother was very fond of her and taught her to cook. But so Dad would always say, "Yeah, first morning," she said, "I'll make you breakfast," and she burned my cornflakes. So that is the great Empire State. I didn't mention the Empire State Building.
Did you touch Buffalo?
I did.
Oh, okay.
I touched Buffalo. That's all anyone really does with Buffalo. Now, there are other places I haven't been, like Chautauqua, which is the south of Buffalo. It's the headquarters of the Chautauqua movement. And I have not been, contrary to popular belief, to Lilydale, which is the big spiritualist settlement in that part of the world.
Contrary to popular belief?
Yeah, I've never been there. It's too arcane for me.
Ooh, and that's saying something.
I don't hang out with spiritualists. No seances for me.
If you could live anywhere in the United States, like disregarding perhaps friends, just based on, let's say you're just surrounded by strangers everywhere, where would you live?
The Valley of the Hudson.
The Valley of the Hudson?
Yeah, I live in Sleepy Hollow or Mount Kisco, where I come from.
Out of all the states, not just New York. So out of all the
Yeah,
states.
out of
Okay.
them all.
Yeah. Okay.
Out of them all. I'd I'd watch the seasons change. I'd smoke my pipe in the mellow autumn. I would go to Sleepy Hollow on Halloween.
I should think so if you're right there.
Yeah, but I love the Hudson, and there are a lot of other places in the United States I really do love.
When you
But
say the Hudson, what does that mean? I mean, obviously it's the river, but is there like a culture
yeah,
around the river specifically, set apart from the rest of New England?
yeah. Well, New York's not New England, but yeah, set apart from
Oh,
everywhere
okay.
around it.
Okay.
The Valley of the Hudson. It's Father Hudson. I was born between his arms on the island of Manhattan.
Hmm.
The Let me see. Arthur Guiterman wrote a book of poetry called Ballads of Old New York. But there was one uh, yeah, this is it. Um, and it sums up how I feel about the Hudson to a T. And this is it, Hudson by Arthur Guiterman. Mahikinituk, river of the mountains, poured to the sea from Adirondack crags, buoying the leafy tribute of your fountains, rocking the navies of 100 flags. Forests are yours and fair embowered islands, cities are yours whose towers touch the skies. Curve grandly down your goblin haunted highlands, lave golden waved the vale where Irving lies. Deep breasted stream, what tales your hills have told me, playmate and friend in days of youthful glow. Now as of old in crystal arms enfold me, take me again within your cooling flow. Plunging I watch your deeper waters changing, gold lighted green to amethystine shade. Strong armed and free your boundless bosom ranging, my heart in yours beats warm and unafraid.
Hmm.
And that sums up how I feel about dear old Father Hudson.
Hmm. All right.
And
Finally. Oh, yeah, sorry.
if I was just going to say, if our audience want to subscribe, say $5,000 a piece, and buy me a tremendous home in the Valley of the Hudson, and also take care of the property taxes, which are exorbitant, $18,000 a year for my old home.
In property taxes?
Yeah, I will happily accept.
How
I can
can
be
that
bought
be? How can
off.
people live there? I don't understand. 18
It's very
grand
hard.
in property
It's,
taxes?
it's very hard for people to live there because, like the state of California, the state of New York is ruled by numbskulls. People who, if they were in private business, would be in the unemployment line. But that's big business is like big religion. The one thing you never have to worry about is being measured for competence. That's why the young people have no future there. It's why people leave the Northeast. It's true in New England. It's true in New York. It's true in Pennsylvania and Jersey. These slimy scumbags.
I'm blown away by the number that you said.
Well, I'll tell you where that came up back in 2014. So, I'm sure it's worse now, but back then, our childhood home had been foreclosed upon by the bank, whoever owned it before, not us. But the bank had foreclosed on it, and it was, shall we say, between owners. And I was standing there, and my nephew was, taking pictures in real time and sending them back to the family in LA. And I said to my brother, who is rolling in dough, how about, buying it back from the bank? And he's thinking, well, I could probably get it from them for a song. I'd have to put some money in it to rehab it, though. The big thing, let me check on the property taxes and see how much it would run. And mind you, this is not a mansion. It's a comfortable middle-class home. Well, it gets back to me. Nah, 18 grand a year. I'm not doing that. Then they don't understand why their tax base is eroding. As my late father used to say, when you're stupid, bad things happen.
Well,
but, I mean, it's certainly partly the fault of the electorate. Where do you get slime like de Blasio or Cuomo, to say nothing of their successors, or for that matter, slime like Newsom and Garcetti?
yeah, I mean, we're all that dog in that fire that says, this is fine. This is fine. Yep. This is
all
good.
racing down the toilet to see who gets flushed.
All right. Questions. Art thou ready for the questions?
I are.
Good. All right. We have 2 questions from John. His first question, he says, why is there always a large overlap between anti-natalism, atheism, and veganism?
Well, because they all have the same wrong view of reality. The wrong view of God produces atheism. The wrong view of man produces anti-natalism. And the wrong view of man and his relationship with animals produces veganism. But if you don't believe in God, everything else will be messed up. Now, mind you, one could be vegetarian or vegan for health reasons, but it's a little bit like cruelty to animals. What is wrong with torturing dogs?
We've been over this. It's the violence it does to you, not the dog.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
what do you want? I mean, stupid is stupid is stupid. If you don't like foreigners and you don't like natives of your place, and you don't like your family and you don't think much of strangers, probably you're not going to like a lot of, or we could make the conclusion you just really don't like people.
That's fair.
So similarly, if you're wrong about God, you're wrong about man, you're wrong about animals, there's an overlap because you're like wrong and stuff.
Right. All right. What issue or issues does Charles lean the most left on? Ooh. How do you like that one, Charles?
Well, what does it even mean? Left of what? What's he talking about?
Yeah, liberal. Where are you liberal on things?
I'm liberal on taking government's money. No, the problem we have here is one of definition. Firstly, because what we call liberal in Europe and Latin America was always called socialist. What we call conservative, they called liberal. What they call conservative, we don't have, not as a big organized group. And so it gets a bit skewed because classical liberals, whether in Europe or America, were interested primarily in the economy and not really in anything else. Anything that impeded the economy, and that included old customs and traditions, was wrong. Anything that built it up was good. And that also meant that their attention was deflected from the cultural and other wars being fought in society, especially academia, which in the end proved to be more important than the free market. That's why the Reagan Revolution didn't last, because it was not fought in academia. It was not fought in the arts. It wasn't even fought in conservation or in historic preservation, which in Europe and Latin America were all considered areas that conservatives should fight in. In the end, they've pretty much lost in those places here in Europe, but that's primarily because the might of the government has been behind the left ultimately. But in America, it fell by default, because not all, I mean, you had some people like Russell Kirk, but by and large, most people who call themselves conservative were not interested in the arts or historical preservation or conservation or any of those things. So I guess you could say in that sense, that's where I'm a leftist.
When it comes to the arts, an interest in the arts.
Yeah, because in American terms, that was always considered to be the province of the left, and so they took it over and ruined it. A good conservative was only concerned about free markets. And then abortion, when that came in, that was like an add-on.
The evolution of conservative and liberal is really something, huh?
Well, I mean, it revolves around the French Revolution ultimately, but the problem for Americans is that we are a product of a liberal revolution. I know a lot of American conservatives like to maintain it was a conservative revolution, but John Locke was not a conservative. I'm sorry, but he wasn't. And he was the major, I mean, let's put it this way, except that Jefferson was a better writer. If Jefferson had submitted the Declaration of Independence as an academic paper, he would have been dinged for plagiarism from John Locke. It's true. Better stylist, but he said the same things that Locke said in basically attacking James II. And believe me when I tell you that the Royal Stuart Society bow tie I'm wearing tells you who I think was right when it came to the deposition of James II.
All right. Question from Daniel. He says, my first question is about the Mennonites and the Amish. There are large populations of both groups in my area, and I've never actually understood what it is that they believe. I asked Charles to please explain all that he knows about the origins of both groups, and also what some of the key aspects of their theologies are that differentiate them from any of the other Protestant groups.
Well, all Amish are Mennonites. Not all Mennonites are Amish. The Mennonites were founded by a Catholic priest named Menno Simons, who during the Reformation became an Anabaptist. And they rejected infant baptism and so forth. And that's the Mennonites are still into. A segment of them, and they took the Bible very literally. A group of them, led by another ex-priest named Jacob Ammann, said that basically they could accept no technology that was not in the Bible.
What's the timeline on this? What are some dates?
15 and 1600s.
Oh, that's a long time ago. Okay.
Yeah, and they were basically in Germany and Switzerland. They emigrated to the New World in colonial times and have spread ever since. The Amish only became extinct in Europe just before World War II. So now they're only in America and Canada. Now there's another group, a similar group called the Hutterites, who are the Mennonites take normal technology. The Hutterites are sort of midway, and the Amish refuse it. And the Amish have different degrees of refusal. So some of them, for instance, will accept buttons. But because they were founded before buttons were invented, some of them are what they call hook and eye Dutch. and they won't accept buttons. The other thing is that the Amish young people, boys and girls, are sent off to the city for a year or so, and then they have to choose if they want to come back or not. Most of them come back.
That's interesting. Didn't they turn that into a reality TV show or something? I think somebody somewhere did that.
Yes, and they turned into Weird Al Yankovic's Amish Paradise.
I've actually seen that one. Yeah, based off Coolio's Gangster's Paradise.
Yeah. Did it make you feel better though, Amish Paradise?
Yeah, I like it. Weird Al is a funny guy.
Did he help you get in touch with who you were at the time?
No.
Have
Was
you
that
ever
his
wondered?
intention to get everyone in
Well,
touch with themselves?
I think that's a valid question, and I think it's one that we really need to look at, to meditate on. I don't think that we can say with any certainty whether or not Weird Al was really interested in pushing the envelope of post-structuralist discourse. I think it does represent, in some sense, an entirely new paradigm, however.
All right.
You don't want to go anywhere with that, do you?
Well, no. What I was thinking is, do I have to break out a channel identification, a station identification on you? But looks like
Let me ask you one question.
what?
Brother, can you paradigm?
No. All right. Daniel has another question. He says, so I'm gonna group two questions together here. One is from Daniel, another's from Anita, and they kind of ask the same thing.
This is the Crusade channel. Radio the way it should be.
At crusadechannel.com.
Thank you.
All right, so Daniel says, I'm a huge fan of the series of books concerning Father Baptist and the Knights Templar. The final book that I could find published was clearly meant as a part 1, and I was hoping you fine gentlemen could say whether any more will ever come out. I tried to research whether Mr. Biersach had passed away, and it didn't seem like he had. No, he's alive and kicking. So I'm surprised that it's been so long without part 2 coming out. So then Anita, a super fan Anita, says, greetings to Don Vincenzo, the capo di tutti copy of Tumbler House, and to Pierre Bonton, the original Knight Tumblar, about to conclude an undercover Austrian fact-finding expedition on behalf of Father Baptist and traveling under an assumed name. I just read and loved The Endless Knot. It was a great story, full of characters I recognized only too well as a native of the archdiocese in question. It was so hard to put down when pesky interruptions came along, like bedtime or having to go to work. I waited somewhat impatiently for my next shipment of Father Baptist books, which finally came today, tied to a brick thrown through my front window room. The damage is totally worth it. All right, that's good.
Now this lady knows.
Yeah, we're all about the Tumbler House experience, you know? All right.
That's right.
So she says, is it true that Professor Biersach is working on a 6th installment of Father Baptist? If so, when can we expect it? And can I get a signed copy? By the way, the Biersach and Coulombe talks on the Tumbler House YouTube channel are first rate.
Well, thank you very much for that last. We enjoyed doing them. Right now, for the past several years, the professor has been dealing with some family issues which have kind of precluded his getting anything done. He wants to. He very, very much wants to revisit Father Baptist, especially because he and the Knights have been left, as you know, trapped in the rectory one Christmas Eve. Even Don Vincenzo is getting a little restive, wondering what happens next. I can tell you that I have seen some manuscript work and I have an idea where the story will go. But I ain't saying. Pray very hard for our Bill, because he does want to finish them, but it's going to take certain things happening first. So pray very hard that everything works out, that he's able to finish them. Then we'll have a huge Tumblr House launch party. You'll get special friend of the chief buttons that allow you to park in the red sections in Arcadia, and then you can just go to the tower. But if I were you, I wouldn't bring anything valuable in your car.
Hmm.
You know, if you've got any really valuable property, and you're thinking of coming for the signing party at the tower that day, leave it at home.
That's right. I mean, it makes sense because just the upper class is going to. I mean, we've got the cream of the crop, right? So everybody's the richest of the rich, right?
That's it.
So you've got a sort of criminal element that is pretty smart over in this area, the broader San Gabriel Valley region. And so, I mean, this tends to happen. But don't worry, Officer Clancy, or excuse me, Chief
Clancy.
Clancy is working.
He's on the case.
He's on the case.
Billy Club's whirling. The Arcadia PD will be out in force, and if they catch anybody, let me tell you, there'll be blood on the pavement.
That's right. Okay. Well, by the way, just shameless plug to the Bill and Charles Talks. We have a playlist on the YouTube channel for that. For you guys who haven't listened to that, so that's way back in the 90s that they were recorded when it was on cassette tapes, and they exist on YouTube because I had transcribed the cassette tapes and turned them digital. So these are really the talks that sort of really got me going, because they were saying all these things that I never even heard anyone talk about before, like Americanism. Back in the 90s, it's kind of in vogue now to say some of these things, but back in the 90s, man, really, there's only maybe a handful of people saying these type of stuff.
Are you saying we were cutting edge?
You're cutting edge.
Were we edgy? Were we edgy?
You were a monarchist before it was cool to be a monarchist, Charles.
It's not cool now.
It's cool in circles, I feel like. Well, I guess so. We're in the stage of early adoption, right? Like there's a product cycle, right, where the people buy into it, and but not everybody does. So right now, I feel like we're in the initial stages of early adoption.
Gosh, they do that a lot at the pound with puppies.
No, but did we talk about this on the show before?
Yes,
the feelings toward monarchy. No, not puppies. The feelings toward nice try. The feelings toward monarchy. I
was all set to talk about puppies.
I know.
Everybody loves puppies.
The sentiment pro-monarchy, the pro-monarchy sentiment among young people are really huge. It's increasing. Man, I think you kind of commented it's for unfortunate reasons.
Yeah, well, I believe it's for unfortunate reasons, simply because, and don't get me wrong, I believe in monarchy, but the problem is that the system has so signally failed in so many ways. A lot of people say they're for monarchy, but what does that mean? Are they in favor of traditional Christian monarchy? Are they just in favor of one-man rule? Because we have a lot of that. Look at Gruesome Newsom. Or dictator Kim of North Korea. But the other thing too is that America just does not mean what it meant. There's no other way I can put it, and in some ways that's a good thing. But let's put it this way: let's say that I've always been a philanthropist and an altruist because I thought my father was. I've done all this wonderful stuff trying to live up to the family tradition. Then it turns out that Dad was actually a thief, and it was all money laundering. One would hope that I'd be in the habit now of being a good guy.
You know, you could sort of, if you made that a little bit vague, that metaphor, that's almost like what's behind critical race theory. No, I mean, where it's like, oh wow, it turns
Well,
out all
these
all
guys
this,
were terrible.
but in a different. Obviously, they have a different focus.
They've got a very different focus. And of course, with them, I mean, shall we review, speaking of critical race theory, shall we review what the Smithsonian Institution calls the white traits that have been forced on people of color?
I remember
Remember?
this because this was so egregious.
Well, let's see. Now, remember, the things I'm going to read you, ladies and gentlemen, these are the terrible things that people of color have been made to conform to because of evil Whitey. I'm not going to read all of them, but I'll give you some.
Some are especially cringe.
Well, family structure. Now, these are some of the evil things that have been imposed. The nuclear family, father, mother, 2.3 children is the ideal social unit. Husband is breadwinner and head of household. Oh, so what? He's supposed to beget kids, slack off, and be okay, great. Wife is homemaker and subordinate to the husband. Well, yeah, he's making the money. Children should have own rooms, be independent. Emphasis on scientific method. Oh, this is terrible. Objective, rational, linear thinking. Cause and effect relationships. Quantitative emphasis.
Wait. Say I must have misheard you beyond that one. The rational. What did you say about
Emphasis, yes, objective, rational, linear thinking. This is one of the terrible things Whitey has imposed on people of color. It and then Protestant work ethic. Hard work is the key to success. Oh no, work before play. But the best part, future orientation. Now, these are the terrible white traits that we've imposed. Plan for future, delayed gratification.
So
So
wait.
basically, what they're saying is that they're saying that natively speaking, people of color, they just sort of lying in the sun doing what come natural. And the white man come along and make them, do stuff.
I mean that's like cultural. I mean, it's like cultural relativism, except honestly with
It's
a racist, irrational tinge to it, or something like that.
Yeah, and it's
It's
very
just.
racist. It's very rational. Basically, what they're saying is that any person of color who is competent in a world that is run that way is a traitor to his race.
Yeah, I mean,
These are terrible traits that have been imposed upon people of color by the evil white man.
and so not planning for the future is a cultural attribute to be embraced more fully.
Yeah. Immediate gratification, irrational, nonlinear thinking. You should have your woman support you.
That's like
Okay.
I mean, right? That's just like that's like the seeds of the suicide of a nation, right there. It's like, okay, we're gonna abandon rational thinking. We're gonna abandon planning ahead. We're gonna abandon the family structure.
And the best part is the chick who wrote this is a white lady, of course.
Of course. Oh yeah, we looked her up. I remember at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's spitting this crap, and I guess Negroes have to do whatever she says. So let that be a lesson to you, my black viewers, that if you don't conform to what this chick tells you, then you're a traitor to your race. Basically, the only way you can succeed as a person of color is to be a total failure. That's the message. And if you're not a failure, you're somehow not black enough, not brown enough.
Can you give us how did you find what you looked at just now? You Googled
It used to be on
Smithsonian.
is Smithsonian African American Museum whiteness,
Okay.
but they've taken it down since. For some reason, yes, people were making fun of them. People thought it made them look like jerks, and everybody who thought that was a racist. You know, I've come to a conclusion that the first person to use the word racist in an argument is a racist.
Wow.
Basically, if I say, well, you know, the problem in the black community is that the business base completely fell apart and the family structure fell apart, and that's why they're in this terrible shape. And if your response to that is you're a racist, no, you're the racist.
Is that something that came out of the 60s specifically? Yes.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. 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 Yep.
Yep.
All too true.
All right. Anything else on I don't want to interrupt your rant.
No, I'm not going to rant anymore. I mean, it's pathetic.
Yeah?
Yeah. Just pathetic.
All right. Okay, last question. From none other than Vendée Radio.
I'm sorry, I'm waving my arms around.
Oh, no, we love that. We love that for you.
Yeah, but it's undignified.
Just give me a break.
All right.
Just no, I'm talking to the person who said that. Just go away. Just
So basically, we're shutting down the dialogue. We're closing out the conversation. That's what you're saying.
I feel like dialogue is a privilege, right? Like,
what
if you're talking to me, that's a privilege for you.
What if I've got a really stupid opinion?
Then that's definitely why we have a filter on these things. That's
no. All right, fine. Be that way. I don't care.
All right. But no. But our group, our fans and our patrons are all so smart.
That's
and
true.
Wonderful. No, actually, they really are.
Yeah.
So, all right. Vendée Radio is one of them. So he says, Dear Charles, I noticed that the Virginia governor-elect still wears morning dress for his inauguration, as does the U.S. Solicitor General when delivering oral arguments before the Supreme Court. What other public occasions do American men wear full formal day wear? Is it still worn at any horse races?
A few. I think the Kentucky Derby, they still wear them.
Yeah, and the women do the hats too and all that.
Yeah. And there are a couple of inaugurations, at least. I think the governor of Kentucky is still inaugurated with morning coat. Weddings, you'll still see them if it's a good wedding, a decent wedding, you'll see them. You will still see them in New York at the Easter parade. But I mean, the sad truth of the matter is that the decline in the use of the morning coat has been a symptom of the total decline of society anyway, and certainly of governance. Formality in government is a very, very important thing because it shows that the people doing it have some sort of regard for what they're doing. The minute, and forget just the morning coat, the minute they start setting aside the weird costumes of office, it means it's all about their comfort and them and their little sweet selves. and they don't want to look funny because they're so wonderful, so wonderful. And I think there may be a sense in which that's true, to the degree that garbage wrapped in silk is still garbage. I think that, and it may be that not wanting to dress formally is garbage, not wanting to be in silk.
Well, it's interesting because I'll play devil's advocate a little bit, and you could say that the morning coat is a formality that was during a racist time, right? Or you could say something like that, right? You could say, oh, sure, okay, fine. But we haven't, these people haven't developed a new formality or a new style.
And firstly, let me say this about that. If you want to know how stupid that argument is, go to a black church service.
Interesting.
Black women in churches know how to dress, and they still wear hats. Let me tell you, they wear hats. They call them crowns. So, very often black people have a much better sense of this kind of thing than a lot of really stupid white trash in charge. WTIC, white trash in charge. The abiding sin of our time. And you've got the critical race theory chick basically attacks blacks for being successful. What she leaves out is just how horrible white trash are when they're in power. And I tell you, there's nothing quite like white trash. And I'm not talking about the real thing, poor Southern whites. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people with white skin who have, for one reason or another, decided to be trash. Now, on the one hand, I honor their life choices and I celebrate their experiences, being a member of my generation. But basically, all those things that she talks about as being white traits, they're not white traits. They're any healthy culture. But any white man who rejects them is trash. And I don't use white trash as a class thing, because it's not. I've known many poor whites who were worth 50 of most of our state governors, to say nothing of a lot of our presidents. I've lived under. I was just in Pilot Point, Texas, and I went to the Buc-ee's near there, and I had a short conversation with a lady who was obviously of modest means. And, I joked with her a bit. Sharp sense of humor. I guarantee you, if I'd had the same conversation with the President of the United States, he'd have fallen asleep. No, but at any rate, so that's pretty much where you'll see it. It's funny. I was at a wedding. I was at two weddings here in Austria. One was very formal. This is both in the last August. One was very formal. I wore my morning coat. The other was for a friend of mine who's a farmer. Has a farming family. So they were all in Trachten, lederhosen and all that kind of thing. So I showed up in my morning coat, and my friend says, "Why are you wearing that?" And I said, "Thomas, you're wearing your folk costume. I'm wearing mine."
I do. I do believe that I think formal wear is going to come back because it's so different. There is a rebellious spirit, I feel like, in America. Like, it's formed in rebellion, right? Like, we have gone so like, how much further can we go in terms, like, to go further? It's like people, I mean, how do you go further than what you wear getting out of bed, right? Like, how do you go further in terms of some modesty things and just just go to the store in your underwear, you know? Like, there has to be some reaction against
Well,
that.
there is, and I don't know if I've showed you this. There's a very great cartoon that illustrates the difference between the different kinds of formal wear, semi-formal and informal. Interestingly enough, informal is what we would call a suit.
Right.
You know, uh, semi-formal is what's called a stroller coat in the United States that President Reagan wore back at his inauguration in '81, and it's called a Stresemann in German. But um, the nighttime equivalent is what we would call a tuxedo, what other people call a dinner jacket. That's semi-formal.
Yeah.
And then formal is white tie and morning coat. And you may remember, I don't know if we did it at your brother's wedding. I know we did it at Mike Dykes's. We all wore morning coats till 6, and then we switched into white tie.
That was my brother's. Yes.
Yeah. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Then at your wedding, I jumped out of the cake and no one appreciated it.
Or the giraffes or the elephants.
No, they didn't. Or the bagpipe. They didn't like the dwarves. They didn't like anything I provided.
It's a little too.
Even to this.
It's a little much. Little much.
You didn't like sonata for bagpipe and castanets? Are you really going to say that? Are you going to sit there and tell me that?
I don't like bagpipes at all. Sorry, sorry, Ross.
Even with castanets?
Oh man.
Well, don't feel too bad. Are you sure that's the last question?
That is the last question. We're at 1 hour and 30 minutes. We're closing it on up. Any last words, Charles?
I regret that I have but one life to give for my God, my emperor, my king, and my country. Oh, sorry. Wrong show. Well, pray for the short pilgrims. There were 30 years ago. Your brother and I were on the short pilgrimage 30 years ago today.
Cool. Yeah, I remember when he went.
30 years ago. Does it make you feel old?
It's not my life. That's your life. Does it make you feel old?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you asked. You asked 30 years, and they've gone by so quickly.
Hmm.
You know, the other thing, you brought up the Endless Snot. You know, it's the 25 Hanky book.
What is that?
The Endless Snot.
No, the Endless Snot. I got you.
It's the 25 Hanky book.
You know, I actually am completely wrong. I think I skipped a question from Daniel.
I thought you
like
did.
That. There's a reason why Charles was waiting for something. So Daniel had a question. He said, I would also like to ask Charles to discuss his book of poetry, The White Cockade. This is a
See, you had told me that one of the questions was going to give me the chance to plug that, and it never came up.
Well, you weren't good. You weren't nice to me, and so yeah, you did that for a little bit, but then. All right, let me finish reading the question. All right. So he says he purchased the White Cockade several years ago, and remember finding several of the poems to be quite good. He was wondering if you still write poetry, if you have any plans to publish more, and if any of those poems in the White Cockade are your particular favorites, and if all of the sentiments in those poems are still the same for you today, many decades later.
Woof. All good. Well, the answer is, I'll do it in reverse order. The answer is yes. The sentiments are all the same. They have not changed. Number one. Secondly, there are. I mean, I'm very very fond of them all, really. But the one that I have memorized goes. It's called A Note of Dissent. It goes. I must admit that I often dream of the glimmering light of the old regime. In my secret garden grows the lily and the fair white rose. Over all, the mournful cry of the double eagle fills the sky. In this day of grenade and tank, when real power lies in the bank, such yearning for a muse of fire runs counter to approved desire. But still I hope a day shall come before my tale of years is done, when exile to the realm of dream is the soulless face of the new regime.
That's very you. It sounds like that's still you.
Yeah, nothing's changed. Now, as to new poetry, actually, in the years since that came out, I've only written two. The one of them is very, very short, and it's actually to Gary Potter.
I remember, I think when we had you write, Tumblr House republished it, I think you did a foreword or introduction or something, and you had said poetry is a young man's game.
Yes, it definitely is.
And
it definitely
is. It makes sense because young men are so idealistic and dreamers, and then old men are jaded and well,
I mean, you call it jaded?
Is that why you say that? I mean, is that what was in your head?
That's exactly what was in my head, and it was true. But this, I have two. This is just a quatrain, and it came to me all at once. It's to Gary Potter. Our hopes for early glory fail. The causes that we fought for die. Still avidly his cross we hail in silhouette against the sky.
I remember that actually because that was such a so it's like a crucifixion of sorts in terms of the things you fight for die.
Yeah, that's an old man's poem.
That's definitely an old man's poem for sure.
Now the other one came after I wrote the Grail, the book on the Holy Grail, because I had all this stuff bouncing around in my head, and a poem just popped out, literally. And it goes like this. When Arthur was king in Camelot, and Clovis was king in Gaul, there lived a little fairy inside a garden wall. Now Arthur has gone to Avalon, and Clovis we know not where. But this you may depend upon, that fairy is still there. If you go to seek that fairy, and be not kingsman true, pray you never find him, for horrid things he'll do.
Well, I can tell one influence of that. That's the little folk, the wee folk.
The wee folk. Oh yeah.
Where it takes a turn, right?
Just la 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 la.
Yeah.
And that poem, the wee folk, the line in it: "Oh, we that bless the wee folk, we'll have naught to fear." Just looking around.
That's
But yeah,
interesting.
that the it also implies that the fairy has been sitting there on that garden wall since the 500s.
Hmm. Well, there's a lot I feel like underneath those sentiments. Now, just spending some time thinking about them, it's like because the wee folk and the fairies, these are things where you don't consider them to they're not the powers that be,
No,
and yet in these instances they show that you better not mess with us because you will get some. There will there will be repercussions if you mess with us.
you you may be running the show now, but every dog has his day. It's well, it's like the poem Tamlin, the ballad Tamlin, where um, Lady Janet is given the area of Carterhaugh by her father. Well, the problem with Carterhaugh is that it's haunted by a demi-fairy, a sort of elf, Tamlin. And if you go there, if you're a maiden and you go there, you better not, because Tamlin is there and he will demand, shall we say, your virtue. And but Janet, she responds very, very, uh, she's very tough, and let me see, she says, let me see if I can get the version I want, because there's so many versions of it. The one that Steelline Span does has the best lyrical form. Uh, the Janet goes to, here it is. Oh, I forbid you maidens all that wear gold in your hair to come or go by Carterhaugh, for young Tamlin is there. If you go by Carterhaugh, you must leave him a wad, either your rings or green mantle, or else your maidenhead. She's away o'er gravel green and o'er the gravel brown. She's away to Carterhaugh to flower herself a gown. She had not pulled a rosy rose, a rose but barely one, when by came this brisk young man, says, Lady, let alone. How dare you pull my rose, madame? How dare you break my tree? How dare you come to Carterhaugh without the leave of me? And she says, Well may I pull the rose, she said. Well may I break the tree. For Carterhaugh, it's my father's. I'll ask no leave of thee. She's a toughie.
Hmm.
And he tells the story. Basically, he's an enchanted human being who's been trapped by the Queen of Elfin. And every 7 years, she pays a tribute to hell. And he's afraid this year it'll be him. But she can rescue him. If on Halloween night, when they ride past, she pulls him off his horse and holds onto him very tightly. The Queen of Fairy will turn him into different things. But if she holds onto him, she'll win him. Well, it happens just that way. And she holds onto him. And finally, she's wrapped him in the green mantle and knew that she had won. The Queen of Fairies, she cried out, young Tamlin is awa. Had I known, Tamlin, long before you came from home, had I known you, I would have taken out your heart and put in a heart of stone. And there were a lot of these sorts of things. One of my favorite of these ballads is True Thomas, about Thomas the Rhymer. And I won't read the whole thing, obviously, because we're getting late. But True Thomas lay on Huntley bank. Fairly he spied wi' his ee, and there he saw a lady bright come riding down by the Eldon tree. Her shirt was of the grass green silk, her mantle of the velvet fine, and all the tet of her horse's mane hung 50 silver bells and 9. To Thomas he pulled off his cap, and louted down to his knee, All hail, thou mighty Queen of Heaven, for thy peer on earth I never did see. Oh no, Thomas, she said, that name does not belong to me. I am but the Queen of fair Elfland, that am hither come to visit thee. So they ride on, and they see 3 roads. And she says, and this sort of epitomizes Fairy to me, what she says, Oh, see ye not yon narrow road, so thick beset with thorns and briars? That is the path of righteousness, though after it but few inquires. And see ye not that broad road that lies across the lily leven? That is the path of wickedness, though some call it the road to heaven. And see ye not that bonny road that winds about the Fairney Brae? That is the road to fair Elfland, where thou and I this night maun gae. So you see, at the last battle, when the forces of good and the forces of evil are arrayed against each other, and it seems like the good must lose at last. Oh hear, how thin and clear the pipes, the horns of Elfland faintly blowing. Yes, they'll arrive just then in time, and together we'll smash the goblins and the orcs and the demons and all the rest of them. Nobody's ever predicted that, and I'm making it up on the spot. But I believe that when Liberace predicted it, he knew what he was talking about.
Yes, Liberace was right.
What do we don't believe? All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, I've got a question for you, boss man.
Yeah.
If it is Whit Monday this year of 2023, if it's Memorial Day, what is it?
It's Off the Menu, now being broadcast and podcast on the Crusade Channel, talk radio the way it should be at crusadechannel.com. But wait a minute. I have a question. What about the soul you save?
Well, if it isn't Tam Lin's, and it's not Thomas the Rhymer's, I presume it's yours. I mean, no, it's mine.
Wait, what? The soul
I save may be my own.
That's right.
All right. God bless you. Take care.